Welcome back to 7997 with your hosts, Chris and Jackie, two black immigrants living our best life in Mexico. Today it's just me. I wanted to share a little bit about my healthcare experience here in Mexico, because my experience is a little bit unique, maybe for some other folks, or maybe this is something you can connect to yourself. I'm going on about, almost 10 years now as a kidney transplant patient. 10 years ago, had kidney failure, was on dialysis for a little bit. I was fortunate enough to get a donor for a kidney. So I've had that kidney for about 10 years now. Very fortunate, thankful every day that, this kidney is held up for me, and, the person that sacrificed this kidney for me is always a big thank you out to them. I think one of the important things to think about when you're coming to Mexico, obviously, is your healthcare, because the healthcare system is a little different. It has its pluses, it has its minuses. There are things it's good at and things it's not great at. I guess up front, I would say it is not great at kidney transplantation in general. So if you're thinking of coming down here to do that type of procedure, stay in the U.S. Best place to kind of have it, maybe like a Thailand or something like that, may be a great place as well. Not Thailand, but maybe Malaysia or something like that, that has a much, more advanced healthcare system. But I want to talk specifically about someone who may be in my position where you've had your kidney for a while. It's pretty stable. You're not too worried about things going wrong at this point. And you really just need sort of maintenance health care. And one of the big first things you're going to think about is medication and medication costs. So we're thinking about medication for kidney transplant patient in general, and this may apply to, some other health conditions as well, is that there's always sort of like this basic level of things you need, that come with the condition. Like you're going to need some blood pressure management. You may also be diabetic along with this. You may need some help for cholesterol or something like that. And these are all pretty common medications you can find in Mexico, all at very inexpensive prices. So like this is without insurance, for medications like amlodipine or simvastatin, metformin, all these sort of, I guess, now we think of as just sort of generic medicines now that you can find and most people need for one of these very, common ailments. Those cost you between, $8 to $15 without insurance, like over the counter. And there are pharmacies like all over the place. I live in San Miguel de Allende, and you can find 3 to 4 pharmacies on a single street. They'll run sales. You don't need a prescription to get these medications. And there's so many pharmacies really in town that, they're really competitive on pricing. So, on Tuesdays, Farmacia Similares runs specials. You might get BOGOs, or you might get tres por dos, three boxes for the price of 2. So for those sort of basic everyday medications, you can always kind of find them. They're readily available and they're very inexpensive. You don't have to worry about insurance with those things. Now there's sort of a second tier of medications that I in particular need, which are immune suppressants. So I have someone else's kidney inside of me. My immune system says, hey, that's not your kidney, and it tries to kill that kidney. So I need medication to suppress my immune system from hurting the kidney that is not naturally mine. So that really kind of falls into, there's sort of 2 medications in that. There is things like mycophenolate or tacrolimus, which, if you're familiar with those immune suppressants or any immune suppressant in general, they're pretty expensive. If I were to purchase those in the U.S. without insurance, it would cost me, $1,500 for a month's supply. There's been a few situations back in the U.S. when I had to come out of pocket with that because my insurance was funny at the moment. So that's something. When you're in Mexico, as it goes for medication, it's still pretty expensive, right? Granted, from that $1,500 a month I would have paid in the U.S. without insurance, in Mexico, I'll pay about maybe $200 for a 30-day supply, which is a huge savings. But it's still a lot of money to have to come out of pocket for those medications. Let me add in here that if you need specialized medication, your tacrolimus, your mycophenolate, immune suppressants, it's going to be very difficult to find in a pharmacy in town. Those are things you're going to have to kind of special order online. There's a couple of places that I found, like supply is really always sort of really low, right? So like PharmaSmart has been someplace I can go to, pharmasmart.com, that always kind of has it in stock. There's also Vital.mx, Vitau.mx, that from time to time will have these specialized medications as well. So like if you need, some things that you can't find at the pharmacy, there are some sites online where you can get it mail ordered to your house. And usually it takes, a couple of days to kind of get it. So if you plan ahead, you should be just fine and not kind of miss out on any medications. Which kind of leads me into, I guess, the insurance situation. Like, is there insurance here? How does it work? I can't speak to the entire insurance industry. I'm not that knowledgeable on that. I can talk about my situation. In particular, I work for a Mexican company, so they do provide health insurance for me. I will say that health insurance tends to act a little bit like the way health insurance worked in the U.S. 20, 30 years ago. So like, you go and you have to purchase out of pocket first, and then you have to go and fill out paperwork for a reimbursement. There's about a $300, I think, deductible on that. So I really just save up like what I spend over like a month or two in prescription costs for those bigger prescriptions. Those are things that they'll cover. And then I send in, a reimbursement for that, and I get, a percentage after the deductible I get back. So like as a health insurance process, it is not, what you're going to be used to in the U.S., where you just show your health insurance card and you pay whatever price you're supposed to pay as your copay, and you don't have to think about any other costs after that. In this situation, I have to fill out, 10 pieces of paperwork, show specific facturas, which are sort of like official receipts, governmental receipts, in PDF and XML format. And then I had to have a whole paper filled out by my doctor. Like there was a whole lot of jumping through hoops in order to get this reimbursement back. And it did take me probably 3 or 4 tries of submitting the paperwork and them saying it's not right or you need something else before I actually got into a situation where they'll actually reimburse the money. So it was a learning curve to kind of figure that system out. But once you figure it out, you've got it, you know what you need to do, and you can do that, month to month to kind of get your reimbursement back on your insurance. So that's particularly my situation. So after you handle your medications, you're going to need to be able to kind of look at what health is your kidney in over time. So that means blood work. That also means going to the doctor and getting checkups. For the blood work part of it, there's usually a lot of labs around town, all with sort of different specializations. There's some that kind of cover everything, some that do particularly stomach issues. So, you kind of have to kind of know or, ask your doctor, talk to some folks, go to the labs and kind of see what they cover. In particular, the tests that I need are really checking my medication levels to make sure I don't have too much or too little, so that I'm in proper balance to make sure the immune suppression is working correctly. So that I do probably once a quarter before I go see the doctor, so he has some information on my blood levels to kind of know what to do, if I need to make any adjustments to medication, things like that. I do have to go to a specific, there's like 2 labs in town that actually do that type of testing. And those tests are pretty, they're more expensive than your regular testing. You might go into get some regular lab work for like, blood sugar and cholesterol levels, things like that. The sort of normal battery of tests you would run on your blood, that might cost you, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 bucks at the most. For me, with the specialized testing, that package tends to run up to about $200 every quarter. So that's testing all the normal things you need to test: kidney functioning, blood proteins, things like that, as well as it's a special test for the medication to see, is there the proper amount of medication in my bloodstream. So that is something I do have to do as an upkeep, and that service is available. It is a little bit more expensive. Again, that comes out of pocket. So once you've kind of gone through your blood work, then you got to figure out, okay, I got to go to the doctor and get a checkup and get him to look at my numbers. I will say the doctor I have is a great doctor, very personable. There's, I think at least 3 to 4 kidney doctors in town. We're in a small town, so it's not, the biggest medical infrastructure, but, it's pretty good infrastructure for what it is in this city. So I'm able to have that service. He does speak pretty good English. I will say my visits as compared to what I would do in the U.S. is a slight different. Usually when I go and see him, we have a conversation, talk about how I'm doing, checks my numbers, and also he does an ultrasound to check the kidney itself and look at the blood vessels. When I was in the U.S., they never did an ultrasound unless there was an issue. So they weren't just sort of proactively looking at, okay, what's the health of the kidney look like by eye, I guess you would say, or by sound, I guess, since it's an ultrasound. So that's something he has in the office, and he checks it every time I come in there. And then, like, really, there's certain things that he'll say, you know, Mexico isn't necessarily so great at. So there's another test that I can get to kind of check my kidney function, but it's something I can't even get available in my city. I have to go to a couple of towns over in Celaya, and that test costs $500. So there's a couple of things that he's like, you know, if you were in the U.S., there'd be much better testing for some of those things. So there are some advantages, obviously, to the U.S. healthcare system, and it's a little more advanced when it comes to kidney care. And even you'll see differences across the entire country of the U.S. of, you know, transplant outcomes depending on where you are in the country. I was fortunate enough to be in the North Carolina area where there's a really good program at the hospital there in Charlotte, North Carolina, and even at Wake Forest, I think in Raleigh has a very good transplant program as well. So I was fortunate to have that. But he does say, you know, if anything happens to go wrong and I need another transplant or something like that, like it's better to go to the U.S. than to kind of rely on Mexico for that type of care. And as far as the cost for those visits, without insurance, I think it's about $50-$60 to see a specialist. Usually in the U.S., it costs about $50-$60 with insurance to see a specialist. So that's, you know, a big bonus here that if you don't have insurance, you can get a pretty high level of care with the money that you kind of have in your pocket, right? You're not going to get put into debt because I have a cold, I need to see a doctor, or I need to go see a specialist about something. Like, that's not going to put you into debt. Now, if you do have, you know, a big emergency and you need a, you know, big surgery or something like that, without insurance, it's going to be cheaper than the U.S., but it's still going to be very expensive out of pocket. So having some sort of insurance in that situation is going to be super helpful. So to wrap all this up, I would say, you know, for particular, if you're a kidney transplant patient and you're thinking about coming down to Mexico to live for an extended period of time, I would say think about what stage of care you're in and what you need. If you're fresh off a transplant, still within a year or 2 or 3, and there's still sort of that, you know, I need to go see a doctor pretty often to make sure I'm doing good, make sure the kidney is healthy, there's no rejection happening, I would probably wait on that, or maybe look at someplace else to relocate to with a much more robust kidney care system. But if you're someone like me where you've been, you know, with this kidney for quite a long while, it's been doing pretty well, you're pretty stable, all you need is sort of maintenance and making sure that everything is right and making sure your medication levels are correct, then I would say it's probably a pretty safe move for you. Again, I am not a doctor. I'm not giving professional medical advice. Take all this with a grain of salt. This is just my own experience. And so far, I've been, you know, pretty satisfied and happy with my experience here with kidney care. So as always, I hope this information was helpful to some of you out there who maybe are in a situation where I am, like a kidney transplant patient, or if you have some other ailment that needs sort of special care over time, that you can kind of see that you can probably get a lot of what you need in Mexico. You just have to make sure that you plan ahead, ask questions before you get here, get the answers before you get here so you know what your plan of action is to take care of your health once you get here, because the system is a little different, easier in some ways and more difficult in other ways. So as always, we ask you to like, comment, and subscribe. We thank you for watching. Become a member if you have not so far, so you can get all this content early, get extra content. Buy us a coffee if you like, if you think what we're providing here is a good service. And we love to hear your feedback on what we've been doing. We've been kind of throwing you through a lot of different things lately, food reviews and reaction videos and, you know, more podcast style conversations. We want to kind of give you guys a good broad view of what life is about here in Mexico, and we need kind of different formats to do those things. So as always, Cuídate, Arias Garce, take care and take a chance, and we will see you guys next time. Peace.